Okay, everyone. So, good evening. We will start our second lesson today. So, I hope you have understood about the first lesson, which was about the cameras, the basics of the camera. So, today we will start with the basics of the like the photography. Now, just let me know if my voice is clear, everything is fine. Okay, good. So let's start. So we will continue from where we stopped. Okay, we stopped at the camera settings. So now we will move a little bit away from the camera. Okay, and we will move to like we will stay in the camera, but we will move from basics to little bit the other parts of the camera. Okay. Now here uh, there are some other stuff that we have learned in our in the first lesson. So we will move from there, okay, to here. Okay, now let me fix my voice. Let me increase the voice here. Okay, this is the maximum I can go. Is it fine now, the voice? Okay, now here if you will notice that I have this like a video. Okay, like this lecture. This lecture is by Fahad Golra. Now, Fahad Golra is basically he's a an academic, and he made this like presentation. You can visit his website. Like a really nice work he has been doing. Okay, so I'll just show you his work over here. If you can now see on the screen. Okay, so basically this is his work, and this is his website. Is it visible, his website? Okay, so he have made this like some slides, and which is a quite good slides, which with a lot of details and everything. Okay, so let's move back to our presentation. Okay, let me try again. I think uh, for some reason it's not showing. Let me check here why it's not showing, and then I will get back here, and then I will show you. There is some, I think there is some issue here. Uh, okay, now it should show. Now I think you might be able to see now. Okay, now on your screen you might see his website here. Okay, which is basically fahadgolra.com, and you can see all his work over here, his information, his CV. So this is the like some slides that he made, and we will be going through his slides in this lecture. Okay, so we'll continue with with the slides now. Okay, so now the first thing over here is that some of the parts we have already covered in our first lecture. Okay, like if I will go more a little bit more forward, so we have gone through uh, about the camera, about the camera lens and all those things. So I will skip this part because this is what we have covered in the last part. Okay, so almost it's the same. You can go through this. It's exactly the same thing that we have covered in the last part. We just it's just like more in detail. Okay, so we will move to exposure. Actually, exposure you have also covered in the last part, but here we will study more about the like a little bit more about the like our like exposure part. Okay, now here we have photography. Okay, and the exposure. Basically, photography is all based on light. Exposure, as you all know, that in the last class I already explained to you. Uh, we have exposure, which is the amount of light that you have in your scene. If the exposure is a lot, you will see that there will be uh, like like your scene will be too bright, so there will be clipping. Okay, and you will see something like this. If it is too dark, it will be something like this, and you will see more like black part. So you have to divide your scene with exposure. So uh, as I said, like explained in the last class, so if you have too much light, it will be overexposed. A lot of parts will be clipped out. You will not be able to see the correct image. If it is underexposed, means it will be all black. A lot of black spots will be there, and a lot of clipping will be there. Okay, and same thing, you will not be able to see because it is too dark, too bright, too dark, overexposed, underexposed. This is what you have to avoid when you're doing photography. So you have to check whenever you're taking photograph, just check your exposure. Once it is fine, then you start your photography. Okay, so basically these are some details, more like scientific details. Okay, so I'll just explain a little bit about it. uh, Actually, how the light like the image comes inside your inside your camera. It comes through a tiny hole, which is the aperture, and then it goes to the image like plane. Okay, so as much exposure exposed the images, it will be too bright, and then uh, less like bright. Okay, if it is if there is less exposure. Now, controlling exposure, how you control the exposure. You control the exposure with the aperture. If you remember, in the last class I told you about the aperture. So you like increase or decrease the size of the aperture. You make the aperture smaller or bigger. If you make the aperture bigger, a lot of light will come inside the camera, and when a lot of light will come inside the camera, there will be your scene will be brighter. But make sure you don't like increase the size a lot, otherwise it will be too bright and it will be overexposed. Or don't make it too small, okay, the aperture size, or lesser aperture size, otherwise it will be underexposed. Same thing with the shutter speed. As I told you, shutter speed, if it is very slow, okay, that means your shutter will open just like I showed you in the last class, and a lot of light will start and kind of entering inside your camera. So that means the scene will be too bright. So in this case also, you have to make sure that your shutter speed is not too slow. Okay, otherwise it will be overexposed, because you are allowing a lot of light to enter inside your camera. And it should not be too fast, otherwise you will not allow light to enter, because it will open and close so fast that it will not allow the light to come inside the camera, and it will be underexposed. So this is, you have to make sure you are balancing. Okay, so this is how you control the exposure, aperture and shutter speed. And the bracketing that we studied in the last class, if you remember the EV value that we studied, that is basically the image, the exposure of the image. Okay, but the exposure of the camera is controlled by the aperture and shutter speed. Exposure of the image you can easily change inside the Photoshop also. If you don't want to change inside the camera, you can also change inside the Photoshop. So don't worry about the exposure of the image. Okay, just set it up regular, but you have to worry about the exposure of the camera itself. Okay, which is controlled by aperture and shutter speed. Okay, so this is what I showed you in the last class. If your shutter speed, if you sorry the aperture, if your aperture is bigger, that means your size is f by 1.4. So if it is bigger, what will happen? It will allow a lot of light to come inside. So your scene will be bright, but don't make it over bright. You have to control. And if it is smaller, so your size will be f by 16. Okay, so that means the size will be small, so less light will come in. If it is too small, then very less light will come in, so your scene will be underexposed. So you have to stick between, something like here. And it also depends on your scene, so you have to keep on checking, take picture, keep on checking. The only way to get the right aperture is that to test your like you photograph, take a photograph with this, see how it is, then from this, then from this, then keep on checking unless until you get the right like aperture. Okay, same thing is here. You can see that this is what I showed you in the last class. If you remember, I showed you my camera and I was showing you the aperture. Okay, how the aperture is opening and closing. If you will go to my last lesson, you will see this. Okay, now as I like told you, aperture and depth of field. Uh, do you all remember I told you when you have a bigger aperture, okay, a lot of light is kind of coming in. Also, what it is doing is that it is giving you a more depth of field, means whatever is behind will become blurry, more and more blurry. Okay, but if this is small, less light will be coming in. That means the light will be less, but your scene will be very sharp. There will be no depth of field, nothing will be blurred, everything it will be clear, but there will be less light. So that means you have to put some extra lights. Okay, here there will be a lot of light, but the background will be blurry. If you want a blurry background, go with this, but if it is getting too bright, try to reduce the amounts of light. Okay, now if I want less light, so I will go to this value 22. Okay, but the background will be focused, means like it will be very sharp, but the light will be less. But if I'm going to the lesser value, lesser value, lesser value, so what will happen? More light will start pushing in, will start coming in. Okay, when the more light is coming in with this value, the background will also become blurry. So if you want a blurry background, sometimes you want to take a blurry background which looks very nice, but there will be a lot of light, so you have to reduce the light. If you're outdoor, you cannot stop the sun, you cannot close the sun like a light, like a bulb. So what you do, you put some blockers like a black color board or something that like stops the light to hit on your subject. Okay, so suppose we are talking about uh, bigger aperture, okay, wide open aperture like this one. We are talking about this one right now, which is around, you can say this one is 1.8, but let's go here, let's see here, yeah, 1.4, so a lot bigger. So this is 1.4, okay, this is 1.8, but if you have a bigger lens, so it can go to 1.4. So let's talk about 1.4 or 1.8. Okay, how it will look like. You can see that the background is becoming very blurry. Okay, it's too blurry. This part is a little bit blurry also, only this part is in the focus. At the same time, you will see there is a lot of light. Okay, so because it is wide open and you are allowing a lot of light to come in, so in this case, how you can fix it? You can fix it by uh, working with the exposure, okay, or by blocking the lights. You can put some black like part, like black cardboard or black blocker near to your lights so that it will block some lights, okay, or in Photoshop you can fix it, okay. So that's like you can do with it, but your photo have to be raw. When you're fixing in Photoshop, make sure you have raw photograph, okay. Now we are moving now from 1.4 to 2.8, okay. 2.8 is something like this. You can see the size is getting little smaller, okay, something like this, okay. Now when something is like that, you can see that light is not entering the camera more like before, but still we have a blurry background. So this is quite a nice sort of like effect. You can see that because there is not a lot of light, okay. And when there is no lot of light, so we can see things clearly, okay. Things are not overexposed. This is good. Blurry background, very nice effect. So 2.8 going good, but it also depends on your room. Maybe for this room 2.8 is good, but for some other rooms, maybe for your room, maybe for 5.6 will be better. So it depends on your lighting. Now let's go outside in outdoors. Now here we are in 5.6. 5.6 is somewhere like this, and you can see the whole of like the aperture size has become very small as compared to this. It's small. Small means less light will come in, but and the background will be sharper. So if we can see here, the background here is not too sharp because we are still at 5.6. If we will go to 282, then maybe it will become a little bit more sharper. But here it is somewhere between sharp and blurry, but it's not too blurry. You can still see what's going on. Plus, as this is outdoor you usually have a lot of light. So 5.6 is allowing less light to come in. So that's why it is good. But indoor 5.6 might not work because indoor you don't have this good light. Indoor you have not like a kind of a darker scene. So outdoor 5.6 is working because there is a lot of light. And the timing of when this photograph is taken is during the daytime when the sun is there. Otherwise at night you cannot use 5.6. You have to stick to these values, okay. uh, let's go more forward here, okay. Now here we have we are at nighttime, okay. Nighttime, and plus we are at 8. 8 means we are somewhere over here, okay. So not here, like, yeah, somewhere here, okay. So uh, here the flash is used, okay, but you can see everything is sharp. The scene over here, it's taken in Paris, okay. This you can see it's in Notre Dame, okay. Now everything over here is lit up. There is a lot of light, so the photographer don't have to worry about that light. So because flash cannot cover the whole area, okay. Flash will not work over here. Flash will only cover a little amount of the area. It cannot go too far. But as the city itself is like wider, okay, like a lit up, so you don't have to worry about. And you can see things are getting sharper, okay. Now this is 11, same scene of Paris, okay. A lot of light over here, okay. Here you have a lot of light too, okay. But what is happening here is that there is like the light is becoming a little bit darker, because this is 8, this is 11, so light is becoming a little darker, the size is becoming smaller, but you can see that things are getting more and more uh, like sharper, okay. Even I can see in the background more of these things, okay. Now let's move to the shutter speed now. Now shutter speed, as I told you like before, if the shutter speed is slow, this is the slow shutter speed, okay. So last class I showed you the shutter. When the shutter goes up, it goes for a very long time, and it's allow the light to enter the camera okay, for a longer time. So that's why our scene will be, you can see, too bright. If we allow, if we increase the shutter speed, maybe somewhere here, so it will quickly go, like, like the shutter will open and close. And when the shutter will open and close very quickly, it will allow less light to come in, but the scene will be little sharper. So you might need extra light. Okay. So the length of the time, the camera shutter is open. Okay, when the shutter goes up and when it goes down. Longer times lead to more light. So if it opens for a very long time, so it will be very bright. Shorter times lead to less light. So if it is shorter, then less light. Okay. Now, why we use shutter speed? Last class, if you remember, I told you that in the next class, I will tell you why do we use shutter speed. Shutter speed gives you like a perfect picture, okay, depending on your settings. Like faster shutter speed will give you very less motion, okay, but it will be darker. And when it is too bright, like when it is open for a longer time, it will make your scene very bright, okay. So and the motion will be like there will be a lot of motion blur if you are doing any kind of movement. So let's see over here. Here, if you will see, the shutter speed is slow. Okay. When the shutter speed is slow, it will open for a very long time. It will allow more light to come in. But at the same time, because it is open for a very long time, it is taking each and every bit of the movement, and you can see a motion blur. How to get the motion blur? You have to slow down the speed, but you have to make sure that there will be a lot of light coming in. Okay, so motion blur, you will get a motion blur over here. If you want a motion blur, you can go with the slow speed, but when you're going for a slow speed, keep in mind more light is coming in and there will be a motion blur. A teeny tiny bit motion it will capture. So you have to make sure that you are not shaking or moving your camera, because if you're moving your camera, you will have a lot of motion blur around it. So for motion blur effect, for slower speed pictures, you have to keep your camera on a tripod, because if you will not keep it on tripod, you will have a lot of motion blur and your picture will not look like this. Your picture will look like there everything is motion blurred. So that's, you have to make sure tripod or slow speed. Okay. Faster shutter speed, shutter will go up, down, it will open and close very fast. That means less light will come in, but the motion will be frozen, just like this. It will look like it is levitating in the air. It is inside, it is in the air. It's not touching the ground, it's in the air and it's frozen. Okay. Why? Because the shutters like open and close is so fast that it do not detect any or like detect any kind of motion. Okay, very less motion blur, almost no motion blur. Just compare this to this. Don't like motion blur as the shutter is open for a longer time. No motion blur at all because the shutter opens for a very less time. Okay, but for this case you should have a little bit more light. Okay, but for this case you should have less light. Okay, so otherwise your scene will be underexposed or overexposed. So let's go over here. So if you have something like this speed, like if your shutter speed is very less slow, so what you will get, you will get a motion blur. But if your shutter speed is very fast, so you will get a freeze motion, but you need a like extra lights. Okay, and here you need to remove as much lights you can. Okay, now let's see this one over here. We have we are with the shutter speed, low shutter speed. Why? Because as I told you, this part is a aperture, for aperture. Okay, for what aperture? For this aperture. This aperture means there will be no light. So when there will be no light, I cannot see anything. So to control that light, what I can only do is that I can decrease my shutter speed. I will make my shutter speed slower. so that aperture can capture very sharp stuff, like a scene, but the slow shutter speed will allow me to capture all the lights. Okay, but the camera have to be on the tripod. Okay, let's see another image. Now we have moved over here. Now the camera is on the tripod, good, but you can see that while the hand were typing, you can see the motion blur. Okay, that's a little bit drawback. Or if you want this effect, you have to go with this like slow shutter speed. Okay, but your camera have to be on the tripod. Now here you can see that we are at 60. Uh, Here we don't see a lot of motion over here. Okay, first of all, it is on the tripod. Okay, but we do see a good amount of light. Some areas are a little bit overexposed behind. Okay, like you can see they are clipping the white. The white is too much over here, it's clipping. Okay, now here same thing. If I will do indoors, okay, so indoors, here like there is natural lights, whatever lights were there. Okay, even a dark night scene will look brighter. Okay, now if I do the same thing indoors with the studio lights, so you can see that when the artist will take a picture, the person here in the picture, in the photo, if she or he swings the hair or something like that, so what will happen, it will capture every tiny bit of the motion because the shutter speed is slow. Also a lot of light is passing. Okay, now we are getting closer to no motion blur. Still there is a little tiny bit motion blur, not too much, but you can see things seems to be visible, not motion blurred or blurred like this. Okay, now very less shutter speed. Okay, so very less shutter speed, if you will notice over here, is that uh, her like the eagle's wing, it is like it's when the eagle is flapping the wings, naturally there should be motion blur, but as the shutter speed has increased and we are detecting frozen blur, like the frozen motion, there is no motion, so you can see that it looks like the eagle is frozen in the air because there is no motion blur in the wings. Okay, a little bit here because still we are at 1000. Okay, we have not reached to the fastest speed. Okay, now here same thing, if you will notice here, she's flipping her hair but with a slow speed. Now here in this scene she's flipping the hair but with the faster speed, and you can see that the hair, the water, everything seems frozen. Okay, so this is how you can get the frozen speed, or uh, you can get the motion blur. Okay, so this is how the uh, shutter and the aperture works. Now ISO, as I told you in the last class, what is the ISO? Basically, if you're it's like the image sensitivity optimization. If your image is darker or brighter inside the camera, you can change the brightness and darkness by increasing the uh, the ISO of your camera. But if you go over the values, it might ruin you the quality of your image. Okay, for example, let's see. Uh, this is how it works, because it's basically, it's not a realistic exposure. It's like a fake exposure, like what you do in Photoshop. Okay. Now let's see. This is how you will get a ISO, a clear ISO when it is 1600. Okay, very clear, nice result. Okay, there is some pixels here. There is some noise, but hardly detectable because the image is raw. Plus the camera have higher uh, megapixel rate. Okay. Now if I will go to 800, you can see it is becoming little darker. Okay, this is 200, but it looks very fine because this is outdoor. Indoor it will be dark. Okay, so now try different aperture, shutter speed and ISO values. Okay, you can try this in your camera. Okay, first of all, those who couldn't get the camera, okay, like who don't have the camera, I already spoke to Dr. Kamal. You can call call him, and he said he will help you to get the camera, but you have to call him I don't have his number. Maybe you have to call the office and then they will transfer you to him. Okay. Now, this is how like the first lesson was there. Okay. Now, let me go through the second lecture over here. Okay. Now, second lecture, like a little bit, I will explain about recap. Okay. Because this is very important. This is why I'm telling you again and again. Okay. Uh, your large aperture, small aperture, large aperture, more light, more depth of field, more blurry background. Small aperture, less light, less depth of field. Background will be sharp. Okay. Shutter speed, if your shutter speed is very slow, you will get a motion blur. Okay. But you will get more light. Okay. If your shutter speed is very fast, so you will get frozen action, no motion blur, but your scene will be darker. Okay. Now ISO, if you have ISO of 200, you will get less light. Okay. It will capture less light, but there will be no noise. If it is higher, like 3200, it will capture more light, but there will be more noise. Can you see? It looks very ugly because of the noise. So you have to make sure ISO is the best. Okay. Try to increase the light inside your room instead of increasing the ISO. That's the like better practice. Okay. So let's talk about the lens over here now. Okay. Now let's work quite like a camera, like the lens quite work like our eye. Okay, our eye basically have a field of view. Okay, which is something like this: how far we can see. Our eye is not like a fish eye. We cannot, because why we call like fish eye like fish's eye a fish eye, because it can capture a lot of perspective around 180 degree from one eye. So that means it can capture like a wide range of the whole thing. But our eye does not do that. It's like 50 like you can say like degree over here. Okay. Now let's see what is the field of view in detail. Okay. Now here is our camera. Now camera, if you are using a like expensive lens, you will have a lot of field of views, different kind of field of views. If you are using a cheaper lens, okay, so you will have less field of view. Also, there are different kind of lenses. There is a wide angle lens, so you will have wider field of view. If you have a telephoto lens, so you have a lesser field of view. So let's see in detail. Now, this photograph is taken from 43 mm, okay, 35 mm field of view. Okay, so let me show you here how you can uh, check a field of view, how you can fix the field of view. So what I will do over here, let me turn on my camera. Okay, now if you can see over here, I have the lens. Okay, now lens over here, you can see that this is the field of view over here. In this, it's written something around, you can see that 30 like a 50. Okay, and down it is written 35 mm. Okay, now uh, 35 mm is basically down here. Okay, and 50 mm is upwards there. Okay, so where I can find this on the camera, you can see that here I have. Okay, so if I'm talking about 50 mm, so here is 50. So what I have to do is that I have to, if you will see, there is a kind of a tiny what you call this, like a indicator. So if I will move this 55, so now my field of view is 55. But if we are talking about 50, so that means it will be somewhere here, okay, between 55 and 45. If I'm talking about 35, so I can go to 35 directly, okay. So this is how you can take a field of like you can change your field of view. So when you are taking a portrait, okay, so this is basically a portrait. This image is like a portrait. So portrait, whenever you take with uh, 50 mm. Okay, this one. If you are moving near to the person, if you are closer to the person, then choose 50 mm field of view. If you are closer to the like your uh, like subject, to your model. If you're a little bit far away from your model, then choose 35 mm. Okay, let's see why in the other example. Okay, now here, if you will notice that this is all between that 50 like 35, you can see that it's all more like clear. Everything seems like more clear here as well. Same result. Okay, now here you will see that it is 62, a bit of the 62. Now, notice here, just see the footpath. Okay, just see how the line is going here. How is the footpath? This is 46 degrees because it's using 50 mm, 35 mm. Okay, if this is 62 because he is using 35 mm, 24 mm. Now see the footpath, see the line here. It is more inclined. Okay, more inclined means, suppose if I'm here in this one, which is 46, so you can see the line will be like this, okay, something like that. But if I will move to 62, so instead of this, it will keep on going like this, because your vision from this, it is becoming like this. So your field of view is this. Okay, so how it works, this is your camera. Okay, right now it will be like something like you can say let me show you here. It will be something like this. Okay, with the 26. Okay, so if we go to the 26 like 46, okay, with the 46 degree, it will be something like this. Okay, maybe something like this. But if I will go from 46 to 62, so instead of like this, it will go like this. My field of view is becoming more wider. So if it is becoming more wider, so the line that you are looking at from 46, which is something like this, will look like something more inclined because your field of view is becoming wider. So from here to here, if you're doing, so your field of view is becoming more wider and wider. Okay, so this is how your field of view works. Let's see more examples over here. So this is, you have 46, you have 62. Now 46 is between 50 mm, 50 mm and 35 mm. Okay, it can be 40, it can be 45, it can be something like that. 24 to 35 mm is 62. It can be 25, 26, 27, and keep on going. Okay. Now, angle of view is close to human eye. A standard perspective suits, okay, for street photography. If this is the standard, okay, this is also standard, but it all depends on how you want to capture. So it's up to you, okay. But don't use a very wide angle, otherwise it will not look right. So this one is fine. This is good, depending on your choice, okay. So this is how a 24 mm will look like. This is what 16 mm will look like. Wide angle is 24. Okay, this is wide angle. Okay, but normal wide angle. Okay, which we say normal wide angle. See, wide angle, normal wide angle. But if we talk about 16 mm, which is this one, which is more lesser, wider it becomes. Okay, so it will become ultra wide angle. So ultra wide angle means it will be very much distorted. So if let's see about the ultra wide angle. This is ultra wide angle, 64 degrees. You can see 16 mm. Okay. So why you use ultra wide angle? If you want to capture a landscape, not for a person. Don't take a photograph of a person with a wide angle. Otherwise, his face will look ugly. Okay. Now here also ultra wide angle so that you can capture the walls. If I'm not using ultra wide, if I'm using a normal lens, so what will happen? It will be so close, the wall will be so narrow that I won't be able to see the walls clearly. Okay. Uh, this one you can see that this is more wider. This is now we are getting more lesser. Like before it was 16 mm, now it is 10.5 mm. So you can see more of the room. So it depends. If you want to take a picture of the whole room or showing something like that, sometimes to the client you have to show the bigger picture. So you use the like a lesser like field of view to get something like this. Okay. So this is uh, a subject is shown with its environment. Subjects in front of appear larger. So whatever you take a picture, it becomes larger. Okay, good for confined spaces, for spacious spaces like this. Okay, but not for. It's not really good for portraits. Never take a picture of a person or a portrait with a wide angle. Hard to get shallow depth of field. You don't get a shallow depth of field. Okay, because it's very hard to get a like depth of field. There is no depth of field usually. There is, but not too much. That effect you won't get. Special care needed if you use with people. So if you're using people, you have to make sure not so many people are in the scene. Otherwise, they will look flat, something like that. Okay. So you can see that now we are talking about telephoto lens. These were the wide lenses. Now we are talking about telephoto lens. Means like far away object seems very clear and the depth of field here is very less, 16 or 10, something like that. Here it's a lot. That means you will instead of looking at a wider picture like this, you will not be able to take that picture. You have to move very far away because it will capture a very far away objects near. Okay. Now here we are talking about 66 mm. Okay, which is good. Now same picture the person has taken with 134 mm. It's getting closer. Now 312 mm, especially used for wildlife photography. Okay, because wildlife photography is dangerous. You cannot go near to the dangerous animals. So you take with the telephoto lens 312 mm, which means the lens will be very big. Okay, so telephoto lens is has a very good reach, good for like shallow depth of field. You get blurry backgrounds. Okay, background area in the image is minimized. You get more of the subject but less of the background. Compressed foreground and background subject, so it will be compressed foreground and background, unlike the depth of the wide angle. Okay, now zoom is quite like different. What zoom is do is that it moves closer to the object. It's like a digital zoom basically. Okay, so do is not measure of a how distance you can shoot. Okay, uh, why don't interchangeable lens camera don't specify a zoom? So usually zoom is better if you want to take, because zoom in the camera sometimes is the digital zoom. Okay, so when you work with, when you move the camera, like suppose how to move it. Okay, zoom you do from here. If you see this grip, okay, this is the zoom, this is focus. Okay, this is focus, this is zoom. Okay, so basically like it's not a zoom, it's basically the focal length. But if I'm at 55, so so that means it is larger, so less wider, more closer to the subject, so it will look like I'm zoomed in, but in reality I'm not zoomed in. I'm actually using a very like closer area, like it will be closer to the subject because it's not wide. Okay, but if I will go here, so what will happen? It will look like I'm zooming out. So in actual it's not zooming out, it's basically what is happening, the field of view is like becoming bigger and the person will look more wider and wider. Okay, but some camera have digital zoom. Digital zoom means like it will look like you're changing your depth, your field of view, and moving closer and far from the object, but in reality it's not happening that way. What is happening is that it is making the picture size bigger and smaller. Okay, that's the digital zoom. So let's see uh, how a picture of a person will look like. Okay, if we are taking the picture with different kind of like zoom amount or lenses. Okay, so right now this is 14 mm. So 14 mm, you can see that it's wider, and just see how person's face looks like. Its face also looks like wider. Okay, now just see, his face is becoming little bit uh, flatter. Okay, because the photographer moved from 14 mm to 24 mm. Now 35 mm. Okay, 50 mm, flatter, becoming flatter, more flatter, more flatter, more flatter. Okay, and as it will become more flatter, you can see the background is also becoming blurry. Okay, but to take this kind of picture, you can see that his face looks very narrow because it's a wide angle. Then here it looks very flat because it's a less wider. Okay, so you can see how the result is becoming over here. But what the photographer is doing is that while he's changing, because if I will change to 14, okay, so it will look like I'm very far away from the subject. So you have to walk near the your like your subject. Okay, in this case he will be very far, or like he will also like move away, or he will move little bit away from, because as you are getting lesser wider, so your subject's becoming more closer in the camera, so you have to move back. Okay, so these kind of things you have to do when you're taking a photograph to check. Okay, so try that. Those who have a camera, okay, try with like different like amount of field of view. Okay, the focal length. Okay, 14, it will look like it's very far away, but move near to it, take a photograph. Then go to 24, it will look like it's going back, but change your distance. Try to keep a distance something like this. Okay, and in the end you will see something like this kind of result. Okay, so you can see completely his face changes. Okay, now uh, this is like a zoom lens, and this is a prime lens. Okay, prime lens offers fixed focal length, and this offers for variable focal length. You can see there is a focal length just like I was showing you on my camera, but there is no focal length over here. Okay, so I cannot do any kind of field of view change. Okay, so this is how this is all technical stuff, so I don't want to get confused with that. Okay, so when you buy a camera or a lens, so what you see first thing is that you see this kind of information. Okay, so if I will show you on my camera, you can see the same information here on the lens. Okay, so what is this information? Basically, it shows you the maximum aperture. Okay, the lens model, and the name of the company basically. Okay, so this is what it will show you, so you will know how much maximum you can go with this. Okay, so when you're buying, you can look at it at this information on your camera. Okay, so mine is somewhere like same as this is mine. Okay, same as this, so it's already 3.5, 5.6, exactly the same what I have right now on my screen. Okay, so if you will notice this one, you can see exactly the same. Okay, okay. Now here, depth of field, basically depth of here is your subject. Okay, so when you change your aperture, two areas will change accordingly because of the like distance of you and your subject. If you're standing here and your subject is here, this part will also get blurry, and this part will also get blurry if your aperture size is like if your aperture is open wide. okay, for blurry background. But if the subject is moving closer, like he's moving from here to somewhere here, okay, then there will be no issue. The things will not get that blurry or something like that. Okay. So this is the same thing. Depth of field. Okay. So depth of field already you know. If you have the wider open, okay, you will have shallow depth of field. Means like you have a lot of blurry background. If you have lesser, okay, size like smaller aperture, so you will have a perfect sharp background without any blurry. Okay. So aperture, larger aperture means shallow depth of field. Larger focal length means also like shallow depth of field. So if you want a depth of field, so you have to make sure your aperture is like larger also, and your focal length is larger also. Okay, like suppose it should be like 50 mm, 60 mm. Okay, but it should not be 18 mm or 1.4 mm. It have to be larger. Okay. So if you want to take a depth of field, you have to use this value. Okay, aperture 5.6, shutter speed something like this, and ISO something like this, and you will get a nice shallow background. Okay. Now let's see changes in the background. Okay, same picture, but now look at the background. Focus more on the background now, not on him. Uh, lesser focal length. Lesser focal length means the background will be little sharper. Okay, getting blurry, 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 more blurry, and too blurry. You can see that. Okay, because we were increasing the focal length. So aperture also like work together with the focal length. Okay, so this is how you like do with it. So let's see one more. Here we have him standing, okay, and we are at 200. 200 means that we will be able to see him flatter, that there is no wide angle. So if I'm moving closer, so you can see that the scene is becoming wider and wider. Now you can see it's too wide, okay, but here it's too flat. And just look at the trees. Notice the trees. Flatter means the trees will look closer to each other because it is flat. It's not wide. But if I'm going wider, so you can see that the gap between the trees will appear more because what is happening? Your scene will become wider. Okay. So that's also like a compression. This is called compression because if you have a higher focal length, the compression will look like this. It will be, your image will be too compressed. Things will look more and more like closer to each other. Okay, but if you will look at in this way, less compression means there will be less gap. Just notice the trees, a lot of gap is there. Okay, so focal length mainly affects viewing angle, background perspective, depth of field, compression, and etc. All these things. Okay. Depth of field is controlled by aperture, focal length, and shooting distance. So depth of field, if you want a blurry background, you have to make sure uh, like a bigger aperture size, but not too big. Otherwise, there will be too much light and your scene will become overexposed. Focal length, okay, not too wide. Otherwise, there will be no depth of field. So you have to be something like lesser focal length, so your scene around, you can say 100 or something like that, something between here. 85 will be fine. Okay, so if you go between 70 and 105, so that's good value. Okay. Okay, so exposure, as you all know by now how the exposure works. If you have like a wider uh, like aperture size, like a wider aperture, open, like more open aperture, that means it will be too, like there will be more light. Okay, so it will be overexposed if you go more higher and higher. If you're going go more lesser and lesser and lesser, so it will become more darker and darker and darker. Okay, so uh, but it will give you depth of field. This will not give you sorry, it will give you depth of field, this size, shallow depth of field, but this will give you sharper result. Okay, but if you want a shutter speed, okay, so you have to, and so you have to make sure you are at this stage, but there will be more light, so you have to think about the light stuff, but there will be a motion blur. But here, if you want a frozen motion, so you have to go higher. Okay, so the shutter speed is very fast, but it will allow less light, so you have to put more extra lights there, maybe flash or flashes you can use. Okay, so there is a sunny 16 rule. This is when you are taking photograph outside in the sun. So this should be your aperture size. Okay, and your shutter speed have to be same as your ISO. So suppose you are using a shutter speed 200, ISO have to be 200 as well. Okay, something like this. Like suppose I have ISO over here which is 200 but not 250, so near than that. Okay, 16 aperture size, 250 shutter speed, 200 the ISO. uh, there is no 250, otherwise 250 will work, but closer than 250. Okay, so this is how you will try. Another thing, if you want to move from 16 to 2.8, then you have to gain 5 stops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if you're gaining 5 stops, then shutter speed have to be lesser force like stops. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. This one should be 1. Okay, go back 1. So it's a formula, basically it's a trick. So if you're increasing 5 stops, then 4 stop this, 1 stop this. So it depends in that way. Okay, so uh, if your subject is static, okay, so then you have to use maximum depth of field, maximum sharpness, or shallow depth of field. It's up to you, whatever you want. If it is moving, then you have to choose either frozen motion or blurry motion. It's up to you. Okay, so just you can practice with this and see how you can work with it. Okay, now I will move to the lecture 3. Okay, now here in the lecture 3, this is the last lecture. Then after that, you can because I will continue with like this without break. Okay, because I want to finish this class little earlier, because 7 o'clock I have to go somewhere, so I have to finish little early. That's why without the break we will continue with like with this, so you can easily finish like you can finish more early. So this is lesson 3. Okay, like the third part. Okay, so here we can go and see what is this about. Okay, this is a little bit about the like previous what we have done. Now let's see about exposure more in detail. So there is exposure metering in most of the cameras, especially like new cameras, or some high definition cameras, they have a metering. Okay, so metering determining the shutter speed and aperture based on light condition and ISO speed. So what is the metering? Metering is something, it calculates the shutter speed, aperture, light, ISO speed, and then it creates a like a setting for you. Okay, so in Canon, metering looks like this. Nikon metering looks like this. Now this thing is multi-segment. Multi-segment means if you have a lot of subjects, like a family photograph or a lot of people, so that means you will focus with the multi-segment. Metering is what? Metering is focusing something. Metering, focusing the exposure, okay, with the help of your settings. So if you have multiple objects, you will choose multi-segment. Spot, maybe you want to focus on someone specific, okay, like an actor or someone specifically you want to focus him. So you will use spot metering. Center weight, if you want to meter the center of an image. No matter what is in the center, you just want the center of the image to be focused, so you will choose center weight. Okay, let's see in detail how the metering looks like. Partial is only in Canon. In Nikon there is no partial. So let's see multi-segment. This is multi-segment where you have a lot of things. So if I will use a multi-segment metering, okay, you can check in your camera how to like set the metering. You will see that something like this. Okay, and it will help you to capture everything in focus with the right exposure. Okay, if it is spot metering, like suppose this is my spot, this is my main thing, I want to take a photograph, so I will use a spot metering. So it will calculate the focus and exposure for this only image. Okay, center weight, suppose this is the main part, I want to focus on our face more rather than our shoulder or our hat, so I will keep the center, so it will keep her centered focused with the exposure and other things. Okay, partial, partial means like maybe here, there, or anywhere, like some things like weird angles when you take photographs, so you use partial actually. Okay, in Nikon you don't have partial, but in Canon you have. Okay, histograms, already I told you in the last class that your this is the white part, pure white part, this is the pure black part, and this is the correct color in the between. This is called midtones. Okay, this is highlights, this is shadow. So when we will move to Photoshop, we will you will understand more about it. Right now in practical, in theoretical, it's a little tricky to understand. Okay, now uh, this is how like this kind of like a histogram will produce a picture. Now if I will move here and there, so you can see that things will become little bit uh, like overexposed at this part, colors will also play some greenish water or something like that. Okay, now this one is all leveled, so there is nothing overexposed over here, everything is leveled. Okay, here more of the things are in the middle, so that's why more of the like effect is in the middle part of the image. Okay, here uh more over the blacker side, so it will look like a more little bit more darkish, not too dark but little bit darkish. Okay, now this is all spread up, so if it is all spread up, so you will see different like results. Okay, uh in more area. Okay, here as well you can see that's how it looks like. Okay, now here are the different histograms here, so in different ways. Okay, so this one, anyone who can tell me which one is this out of these histograms, which one do you think this is? Anyone? This is A, this is B, and this is C. Just type what do you think. This look more whiter. Okay, so as I told you before over here, this, if you move to this side it will become pure black, it will, if you go to this side it will become pure white. Highlights are here, more whiter area are on this side, or darker area, or blacker area are this side. So keeping that in mind, which one do you think this is? A, B, or C? Just type on your whatever do you think. Okay, So let's see. Basically, this one is A, yes, because it is more whiter to this side. Okay, right? Now tell me this one. Just see a little bit darker it looks. It looks kind of blackish. So this is A, B, and C. So which one is this one? Just let. Okay, this one is basically C. Okay, why? Because you can see it's getting little darker. So more of the part is moving over here. Okay, so less white, more black. So this is the C. Okay, so that's how it like it is. Now, range of light from from the darkest to the brightness, it is like this. Okay, 0 is black and 12 is white. This is about the dynamic range. Okay, here. Now, this one, if you will notice that this is something like darker, you can see a lot of black, and you can see here white clipping. This is somewhere here overexposed as white. So you can see here there is, it's overexposed as white, but but in the end not too much, so tiny bit of white. But middle tone, there is no middle tone. Either there is things are very dark or things are very bright. Okay, which is not right. This should not be like this. Okay, this is how you fix it in Photoshop. Okay, so what you do, you keep your histogram in front of you, and when you're fixing, things should move in the middle. Okay, more closer to the middle, so you will have something like this. Okay, so this is how you will get a nice result. These are different dynamic ranges. Okay, technical stuff, don't worry about this. Okay, now uh, when you're working on your uh, your photographs, okay, uh, like with your camera, so usually you have a Nikon, okay, or a Canon or any other camera. So you have to put it in the manual. So in the Nikon, the manual is M. Okay, and uh, in you have in Canon, okay, M as well, but you have also have in Canon AV, TV, okay, and P. Now what is AV, TV, and P? They are semi-automatic. Means like they will be a little bit of like half automatic, half not automatic. Okay, AV is basically based on aperture, TV is based on shutter speed, P is programmable. If you only want to work with the aperture, then you can go to the AV. If you only want to work with the shutter speed, you can go to the TV. Okay, and if you want to do a programmable means you do your own, but you don't have to that worry about for professional people. Nikon, A for aperture, S for shutter speed. Okay, if you only want to work with the shutter speed or only want to work with a uh, aperture or shutter speed. So here what will happen? Suppose I want the whole camera to be manual, my shutter speed manual, my aperture manual. So I will be on M. Okay, M. But what if I only want my aperture to be manual but others to be automatic? So I will be on A. I will be on AV in Canon, and Nikon A and Canon AV. What if I only want my shutter speed? Okay, aperture, again, let me tell you, sorry, aperture, I was talking about aperture. So aperture, basically, if you want, I want only my aperture to be manual. So what I will do, I will be an A in Nikon or AV in Canon. What if I want my shutter speed to be only manual, other to be automatic? So my shutter speed, if I will move this to S in Nikon, so my shutter speed will become manual. other will become automatic. In Canon, if I want my shutter speed to be manual and other to be automatic, so I will choose TV. Okay, so this is very important when you're using your cameras. Okay, so this you have to keep in mind. Okay, so uh, here if you're going to exposure, okay, exposure mode, exposure will be automatic, shutter speed will be automatic, everything will be automatic. Okay, manual controls, there is no manual controls if you are using a automatic, so everything will be automatic. Okay, but if you're using a the automatic, if you're using this is for automatic, everything will be automatic, no manual control, everything will be automatic. But if we will use a programming mode, programming mode means like you can program by yourself. So exposure will be auto, shutter speed can be auto or manual, up to you. Aperture can be auto and manual, up to you. ISO can be auto, manual, up to you. Focus can be auto or manual, up to you. Flash will be manual. Manual controls will be partially manual, partially automatic. If you're using shutter priority, just like I told you before, everything will be like auto manual, like shutter speed like mainly will be auto manual. ISO focus will be auto manual. Flash will be manual. Manual will be manual controls will be partial. Okay. Aperture priority, it will give priority to aperture. Okay. Rest will become automatic. Okay, manual, everything will be manual, only focus will be either automatically or manual. Okay, it's a good guide. Okay, you can keep it with you, and then you can get it, like whenever you're stuck, just open this up. I already uploaded this, and you can also find this in SlideShare. Okay, just search for uh, like Fahd Glora, and then you will get like his slides over there. Okay, and also I have given it to you. Now, if I will go here, let's talk about exposure. If your exposure is somewhere here, it will be underscore, mean it will be dark. If it is somewhere over here, it will be overexposed. Some means like it will be too much bright. It have to be in the middle, so that neither it is underexposed nor it is overexposed. Okay, now focusing, there are three different type of focusing, as we studied this in the first class. AFS, which is single. Okay, so AFS actually used for a person who's standing or still. Okay, then we have AFC, which is continuous, for someone who is moving, okay, across. So it's for that. AFA is auto, either a still person or a moving person. For safe side, you can keep this. Okay, but professional usually use single or continuous depending on their subject. Okay, so here is your settings on some of the cameras. Okay, this is AF, autofocus plus light meter, and shutter release. Okay, in some cameras you have to uh, if you want to change, like the shutter speed, so you can do with this. Okay, up or down. Okay, it's like a jog. And this one is basically like buttons. This one is a like autofocus lock or unlock button. Okay, and this is for like turn taken on. It all depends on the like the camera itself. Okay, and then if you want to do like single point or a group point or for a metering, so you can use like this. Okay, now these are the some compositions. So I will keep this composition for the next class because it's a completely different topic. Okay, so till now everything is clear. If everything is clear, so just let me know. If you have any question, also let me know. Is there any question? Okay, good. So uh, next class we will continue from here. from the composition, because composition is more creative part of your photography. So we will move, now our technical part is done, and next class we will move to the composition part. Once our composition part is done, then we will move to the Photoshop and Lightroom. Okay, so those who wants to check the book, I already have uploaded the book on the Blackboard. You can go there and check the book. It's there, and the book reader is also there, because you should need a like book reader also. So I have already uploaded the book reader as well, and all these lectures. So check there for all the stuff, and then soon, hopefully by this week, I will complete all your assignments and project details, and I will upload it. So anytime you can go there and check. Okay, so brief I will give it to you right now. Okay, because there are some stuff that you should know before doing doing it. Okay, so uh, what I will do over here is that, let me show you a little bit part over here. Okay, now if you will see on your screen here, uh, we will learn about the composition. Once you will finish learning your composition, in the composition you have different parts. Okay, you have color, you have grading, color grading. Okay, sorry, you have color, you have line. Okay, and let me do one thing here, make it, I will make it more easier for you. Okay, so here we have, you will have an assignment which will be consisting of 6 parts. In the composition, you will learn about color, line, shape, space, and texture. So, for example, I will give you uh, assignment for a color. Okay, so what you have to do is that you will take a pictures that will be about the colors, like suppose something like this. Okay, or like this. Okay, but don't worry about it, because we will study all this in details, and by this week, hopefully I will upload all the details of the classes, like uh, how much, like when do you have to submit it, and how you will submit it. Everything I will upload by this week, so don't worry about that. So then you have line, so everything will be dependent on line. Okay, then here. Okay, so these are some stuff. It's up to you, whatever you want, or like, you have to do. But right now, as we have not moved to the composition, we have not finished the creative part. uh, so there will so at this stage, you might not understand if I will tell you about the assignments. Okay, that's why I kept the assignments for the next classes. But you will have enough time to complete the assignments. Okay, but make sure by this time, those who are in Bahrain, living in Bahrain, please, you can contact Dr. Kamal if you don't have cameras. If you have cameras, good. If you don't have, contact Dr. Kamal. He will help you to get the cameras. Okay. So I prefer you to work with the cameras, because if universities are providing you with the cameras, so please take this chance. Don't use the mobile camera if you have a chance to get a camera from the university. If you're not living in Bahrain, if you're living outside Bahrain, then that's a different story. But still, if you're living outside Bahrain, still try to get the camera from someone else. Okay, clear, everyone? So uh, we will meet in the next class. Okay, and till then, uh, take care. You can rewatch this video if you want to know, if you want to understand about how we were what we have done so far. Okay, so take care, and we'll meet in the next class. So take care, everyone.